Is people pleasing your strategy for not feeling good enough? My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I'm so excited to have my guest Sabrina here. Welcome, Sabrina.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yes, so great to have you. And I love to ask to get a sense of the guests we have on the show. Have you ever been a people pleaser? And if so, how did it show up in your life?
Definitely. I think the vast majority of my life, I was a people pleaser for sure. I actually went into education, became a teacher where I got to please I was a learning assistant teacher. So pleasing other teachers, pleasing admin, pleasing students, pleasing parents, you name it. I was there. And now, even as a counselor, I'm helping people, right? Which gives us that sense of that kind of people pleaser. Now I'd say it's in a more balanced way that's more
Mm.
healthy than it has been previously in my life for sure.
Oh, that's great to hear. So, as we jump into this topic today, before we jump into this topic today, I want the listeners to know a little bit about you. Based in Fort St. John, BC, in Canada, as a registered clinical counselor and the author of Not Good Enough Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety. Sabrina is also a clinical supervisor, public speaker, and holds a master's degree in counseling psychology. At Trobak Holistic Counselling, she aims to help individuals identify, challenge, and transform core beliefs into good enough, important, and valued. So excited to talk about this with you today. So, as we get started today, I'd love for you to share this idea of the connection between the core belief and people pleasing.
Right. So, the perspective from the model of therapy that I practice around this core belief kind of says that everything we do for a reason. And so often if we grew up in a home where there was, chaos, volatility, instability, there's usually one child, sometimes more, that's role is to just try to kind of keep the peace, keep everybody happy. Rescue, take care of the little siblings so that the parents don't have to do it, clean the dishes, organize everything. And that just slowly becomes not only your role, but a massive part of your identity. And so then it feeds that core belief. You think, well, if I take care of everyone else, then I'll feel good enough. But of course, you can't fulfill that and challenge that core belief looking outward. You have to look inward. And so it becomes this thing where we continue to try to people please, but then it often ends up creating feelings of feeling like we're taken advantage of, feeling not appreciated, feeling just kind of or discontent in our life because no matter what we do, it never seems to be quite good enough.
Mm, yeah. So, what's the next step? How do you move someone through this?
So, one of the very first stages we have to do is an awareness. We have to understand what our core belief is and how significant it is and how it's showing up. So, really becoming aware of how much you're actually people pleasing. If you've been people pleasing your entire life, there are likely many examples of you people pleasing that you're not even aware you're doing because it's just so ingrained. It's kind of like breathing. You don't realize you're even doing it until you stop and really think about it. So, one of the first things we want to do is just try to increase that awareness of how often I am people pleasing. And that can be hard to do in the moment because it's hard to catch yourself. But often reflection at the end of the day, just sit back and go, okay, what happened today? Where were times where I people pleased? And you might realize that, oh, I never thought about that. But yeah, that's actually an example of people pleasing too. Once we become aware, then we want to look at, okay, why did I do that? Was I afraid of hurting someone else's feelings? Was I trying to prove that I was good enough? Was I worried about being a burden? What exactly was that people pleasing feeling feeding? And
Mm,
starting to gain that understanding. The more we understand why we are doing what we're doing, the more we're going to be able to make long term change. If I don't know why I'm doing it and I just try to stop being a people pleaser, I'm not going to have a lot of long term success. We have to understand what's feeding it, where it's coming from, why it's
mm. I appreciate that. I'm curious with the individuals you work with, what is the core belief? Is there one or 20 or hundreds? Is it people pleasing? Is it not being enough? Tell me about this concept that you wrote about in your book.
Right. So, I think there's a lot of beliefs that we have about ourselves, but if we funnel them all kind of down, they all seem to kind of fit into three, either feeling not good enough, not important, not valued. Some of my clients really resonate with one, not valued, and not so much the others. Some of my clients, resonate with two of them, but the vast majority, all three, the not good enough, not important, not valued, all seem to have an impact. So when we look at a lot of those other belief systems that we have, and we really look at what is that supporting, it often does come back to one of those three core beliefs.
Mhm. And what was the catalyst for you writing this book?
So I was a teacher for 20
Mm.
years, working as a learning assistant teacher, and then became a school counselor. And I went to a workshop that was presented by a man named Tony Martins, who really looks at challenging and changing from that core belief perspective. So I started taking learning his model of therapy. In 2010, I started my own private practice based on this core belief. And within 6 months, I had a waiting list. And
Mm.
I hate having to turn people away. Right now, my waiting list is 12 to 18 months. So I thought, well, if I write a book, it is at least a resource I can provide for people who are maybe not sure how their anxiety, their people pleasing, their addictions, whatever are connected back to that core belief. So it gives them an opportunity to learn a bit more about themselves. And at least then I can provide a resource rather than just saying, sorry, I got a 12 to 18-month waiting list.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're doing that for those people who are waiting patiently to be a part of your inner circle there. So, can you share? You mentioned in our original discussion this idea of the therapy model where the self, that they value themselves to reduce the need for external approval. Can you talk about that?
Right. So as a people pleaser, you often need that external validation to prove to yourself that's good enough. So if I do a really good job, I still don't feel like it was good enough. But if someone says to me, "Oh, you did a great job. That turns out wonderful. I love the colors and, blah, blah, blah," then I feel good enough. So I rely on that external validation to believe in myself and feel like I've done a good enough job. And until you really challenge and figure out who you are and be who you want to be and create that sense of confidence within yourself, you're going to be dependent on other people's needs or wishes, whatever they want. So it really is, if you just try to not be a people pleaser, it's not going to work. You need to understand that's because you're needing that validation because you haven't created it within yourself. Once you can sit back and go, wow, I did a good job. I'm really proud of how I handled this. You don't need that external validation. Someone says, great job. You accept the compliment. Thank you, but it's not necessary for your self-worth for sure.
And what are the steps that you take someone through to help them get to that place of recognizing themselves and not needing the external validation?
So the model of therapy that I practice is a long-term model of therapy. Most people are with me for well over a year, where we're really going back and understanding how did that core belief develop over time. And what we often see is with people who are people pleasers, that started as a very young age. Even a lot of my clients as adults, we would have called them what we call a parentified child, meaning they're taking on the role of the parent as a child. They're taking care of the family, getting the lunches ready, making sure everything is organized and taken care of, doing the role of the parent rather than just being a kid and having fun and playing. This comes at a significant cost because if, as a child, I'm sacrificing my childhood to take care of everyone else, I'm not creating my own identity. I'm not figuring out who I am. That reinforces and builds that core belief not good enough, not important, not valued.
Mm.
So we go through a person's entire life and look at all the experiences that they went through where we often see this core belief building. And what we often see with people pleasers is it's people pleaser after people pleaser after people pleaser. It just keeps happening over and over and over, then turns into relationships, then turns into, their children where they don't want to upset their children. They want to be the ones that making sure everything's happy and everything's great and everything's
Mhm.
wonderful. And it just grows and grows and grows. Once we gain that awareness and we can understand and kind of see how it developed, then we can start to challenge and change that of, okay, how do I step out of this and be okay to say no? Be okay to not need to fix everything that's going on. Be okay
Mhm.
to let my kids do chores rather than doing it for them because, I don't want them to be upset at me. I don't want to be a burden to my own children. Not realizing that chores are good for kids. It helps them build
Mhm.
character and confidence and gives them a sense of productivity.
Yeah, I appreciate that you wrapped it up at the end there with the practical strategies for after you've figured out the why, after you've figured out and you've developed that awareness. I really appreciate that you wrapped into there are actionable strategies that we can then take, such as questioning. Are there any other actionable strategies that the listeners can go away with if they have done some of the awareness work? They are clear that this is a belief that's getting in their way and it is a problem and they want to move forward. Is there anything else that you would offer them in terms of actions to be taking or questions to be considering?
Sure. So one of the things I always work with my clients, they talk about a scenario where whatever happened. We always then break that down. What did you do well? What did you not really do that well? And what would be some changes or tweaks that you would make moving forward?
Mm.
So looking at that from that people pleaser perspective of what did I do well in challenging myself out of that? Where did I kind of give into that a little bit? And how could I do things a little bit differently moving forward? Now you've got a bit of a plan of what it can look like to move forward and challenge yourself again. People pleasers are very good at beating themselves up and going, "Oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this." And so when I say, "Okay, but what did you do well?" It often stumps them. They don't know what to say. They don't if they're not getting that external validation, they don't know how to find it within themselves. People pleasers are also usually not great with compliments. They just brush them off, right? So to have to compliment yourself, that can be a very foreign process. But every time you do that, you're actually building that core belief of good enough, important, and valued.
Mm.
It kind of feeds on itself as it slowly progresses and changes over time. So that's one strategy. Another one is make a plan, right? If you're going into a situation, you think, oh, I know I'm going to end up volunteering and I don't want to volunteer. Make a plan. What does it look like? How do I not volunteer? Or maybe how do I not volunteer as much? So maybe
Mhm.
you're still volunteering, but you're just reining it in 10%, 5%. Small little steps are much more sustainable. And so
Mm.
we just want, how do we break this down a little bit? And a lot of times it's you just sit on your hands and you don't say anything. You don't even have to say no. Just don't say anything. Hopefully another people pleaser takes it on and then you don't have to. Then you also want to be aware of how does that feel to step out of that role? We might think there'd be a sense of, relief and we'd be grateful, but that's not usually what it is. There can be a sense of disappointment, of fear of rejection that comes from not taking that role on. So we have to be very aware of that, which then brings me to the next step of what's really important is we need to get better at feeling our emotions. Most of us work really hard to suppress and run away from our emotions. The better we get at feeling our emotions, the more we're going to be able to manage things. So if we look at people pleasing, chances are there is emotion underneath people pleasing that's driving that behavior. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, not belonging, that core belief, not good enough. The better I get at being aware of my emotions, and sort through at that level, the less I need that behavior. So what I
Mhm.
recommend, in my book and on my website, I have a list of emotions. I mean, if you search emotions list, you're going to find thousands of them on the internet. Print them off, put them around your house. So when you've got the urge to people please, pull out the list and look at it. What am I really feeling?
Mhm.
Anxiety, fear of rejection, not good enough, unheard. Acknowledging those, even just reading them for 2 or 3 seconds allows you to slowly start to feel those emotions, and it feels manageable because it's not overwhelming. More we become aware of what we're feeling, the more we're gonna be able to better understand why we're doing what we're doing. And
Mhm.
often feeling that emotion, that need to people please starts to come down right away.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought up the need to feel the emotions at it and be aware of the emotions, call out the emotions. Uh, I think the emotions are our guidance system,
For
almost
sure.
like a GPS, giving us that clarity on are we aligned or not. And a question that I like to ask back to myself and have shared with other clients is, would saying yes be in alignment with who I want to be? Or is it only am I only saying this because maybe I always say it or whatever the end of the sentence is, but asking ourselves some better questions can make a difference.
Right, and I think a big part of that is really trying to live more consciously. The vast majority of our behaviors are just reactions that we've done over and over and over again. We don't even think about them. They're happening unconsciously.
Mhm.
Once we start consciously becoming aware of why we're doing what we're doing, then we can start to break things down and make some different choices, do things a bit differently for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I I was noticing on your website that these core beliefs impact our daily choices, our perceptions, our willingness to address anxiety. Can you talk a little bit about these things?
Again, that core belief drives everything we do, right? So it's a beautiful sunny day out, and I think, oh, it's a great sunny day. It's going to be wonderful. That doesn't balance with my core belief,
Mm.
right? So I take that bright sunny day and I go, well, it's about time. We haven't had sun in 4 days, right? Oh, I wonder how long this is going to last. Well, it's only another month, and it's going to start to get cold, right? That feeds and supports not good enough, not important, not valued. So
Mhm.
those perceptions often do that. We're also not drawn to someone who's positive, who treats us with respect and dignity, because now that core belief is out of balance. Drawn to someone who I feel unheard around, who, doesn't make me a priority, who I can sacrifice
Mhm.
for. Ah, that fits that core belief. So we feel
Mhm.
much more content in that. And what I often see is then couples going, well, my partner needs to change. My partner needs to appreciate me more. You have no control over anyone else. The only one you control is you. So when I stop them and say, well, wait a sec, why are you drawn to that person? They often say, well, I don't. I fight and tell them they need to do it. But then you're there the next day and the next day and the next year and the next decade. So while you don't like it, you still tolerate, you still allow it in your space. Why do you do that?
Mhm.
Reinforces and supports your core belief. Challenge at that core belief level. Now those behaviors become old pretty quick, and you realize that you need to do something, remove yourself, challenge those things in a bit of a different way rather than just waiting and waiting and waiting for your partner to change.
Mm, yeah. And I would add on too, it's the education of your own change, the communication of your change, your inner change, the inner awareness that you are now experiencing that your partner or the people around you may have no idea is happening, right? They are not in your head with you going through this journey of new awareness. So it's really important to communicate that, wouldn't you say?
It is, and what we often see is, one partner. I ideally like both partners in counseling because then they're both working on things. But if one is in counseling and the other one isn't, that's scary because a person in counseling is actively working on doing things differently. But for their partner, this is all stuff that's happening to them. They have no control over it. They have no say over it. So they start feeling insecure, vulnerable, fear, and so then we see a couple things happen where they try to adjust to that. And I talk to my clients about this as well, is if one person's in counseling and the other one isn't, a few things happen. One person starts getting healthier and the other one isn't, which now means you're not meeting your partner's needs and your partner is not meeting your needs. So often what happens is the partner goes, oh crap, they're moving on without me. I better figure my stuff out and move forward. And so sometimes they will join counseling and move together. Sometimes they don't want to join counseling, but they'll kind of limp along and try, and they're open to what their partner's saying. And so that gap isn't as big, it's more manageable.
Mhm.
Sometimes we'll see the person in counseling saying, this is too big of a risk. I can't do this. And they'll quit counseling and return to the chaos because that's all they know. It's too scary to remove themselves from that. And sometimes we'll see them where they separate, where the partner just says, I'm not doing anything different. And the other one says, I'm continuing to heal and work on my journey. And so they end up kind of going in two separate ways. So we
Mm,
often see those kind of dynamics happening in relationships when one is in counseling and not the other.
yeah. It sounds then that primarily you work with couples, like, if a person's in a couple, then they're coming together?
Not always, but
Yeah.
a lot of the cases, yes, they are. But when I work with couples individually because
Okay.
what's created one partner's core belief is very different than what's created the other person's core belief.
Mhm.
So to try to help individuals sort through and figure out their core belief, their partner shouldn't be a part of it because they're not
Yeah.
going to be as open and honest, right? People often say, I want you to fix our relationship. Well, a relationship isn't really an entity, it's not tangible, there's nothing there. A relationship is a reflection of the people in it. So if
Mm,
I've got two healthy individuals, it's going to be a healthy relationship. If I've got one healthy and one unhealthy, not going to be a very great relationship. And now we're not meeting each other's needs. So likely not very long term.
yeah.
Two unhealthy people, going to be a very unhealthy relationship, but they're meeting each other's needs in their own chaos. So those relationships can go on for years and years and years.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that you meet with them separately. That's how I work as well. Um, I'm curious, is there anything else that we haven't touched on from your book that would be valuable for us to share today?
Well, I think a big part in the book is talks about anxiety. And
Mhm.
so anxiety is a direct reflection of that core belief, feeling not good enough, not important, not valued. Often what I see is people who are people pleasers have high anxiety. And
Mhm.
we often think about anxiety about being about the trick, excuse me, anxiety being about the triggers, right? I have anxiety of heights. Well, if it really is about heights, then everyone should have anxiety of heights, and not everyone does.
Mhm.
Anxiety is about your belief in your ability to handle it. If I believe I can handle heights, I'm not going to have anxiety. If I believe I can't handle heights, I'm going to have anxiety. So, anxiety is actually self doubt, lack of confidence, not believing in yourself. So, if my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, I'm going to have higher anxiety. I'm not going to believe in myself. So, if I people please, then maybe I'll be good enough. Then it will help kind of bring my anxiety down. All that time I spend taking care of everyone else, that's all time I don't have to take care of myself.
Mhm.
Focus on me. So people pleasing is a role that we've learned. It's a part of our identity, but it's also a coping strategy to avoid dealing with your own stuff.
Mm.
And I talk about all of that in, of course, much more detail in the book as well.
Yes, wonderful. Is there any final thought that you would like to leave the audience with here today?
Anyone is open to change. It's just being willing to take that risk. What I always suggest to clients is go slow. We want small, gradual changes over a significant period of time. And before you move on to the next step, practice, practice, practice.
Mhm.
As you practice, you'll gain more confidence. Remember, confidence is the opposite of anxiety. So the more I practice, the more confident I become, the more I'm challenging that and creating that core belief good enough, important, and valued. Much better to make 3 small steps in 6 months
Mm.
than to have 6 months where nothing really happens.
Yeah.
It's small growth, but that's what's necessary. So small little steps is way more sustainable for sure.
Beautiful. And even though the world operates in the give me the big change quickly right now,
Instant. Yep.
I'm with you. It's bite size, right? How do you eat an elephant? Small bites,
Yeah.
right? Over time. So I love that you're saying that. And the message that I would echo that you're sharing here is getting to that place of knowing truly that you are good enough, you are important, you are valued. This is so wonderful to have you here today. Thank you so much, Sabrina.
Thanks for having me. It was nice being here, Amy.
And for all those people who want to connect with you and buy your book and learn about all the things that you offer, all of your links, social media, website, everything will be in the show notes for them to connect with you.
Perfect.
Wonderful. And to all of the listeners, I want to thank you once again for tuning into Power to the People Pleasers. So wonderful to have you. please stay tuned for the next episode of Power to the People Pleasers coming soon. Have a great day.